What if the vast silent emptiness between the stars is not an invitation, but a warning? For generations, we have stared into the cosmic ocean, dreaming of the day we would build ships to sail its currents, confident that the universe was our inheritance. But what if that confidence is misplaced? What if the physical constants and immense distances that make interstellar travel so daunting are not a cosmic coincidence, but a deliberate, engineered design? This is the story of a chilling possibility, that our solar system is not a cradle of life destined for expansion, but a carefully constructed prison, or perhaps a sanctuary, and that the walls are entirely invisible. Our investigation begins not by looking further out, but by turning our gaze inward, to a single impossible clue discovered at the very edge of our celestial territory. In the silent, sterile data centers of the Interstellar Boundary Explorer mission, an advanced AI flagged a persistent, perfect anomaly in the Oort cloud. It detected a razor-thin boundary, a null energy shell, where cosmic radiation doesn't just get deflected, it vanishes. Physics has no model for this. It is a hard artificial border where there should be an open door. This impossible clue from the fringes of our system forces a terrifying re-evaluation of everything we thought we knew. It forms the thesis of our entire investigation. Our solar system is a quarantine zone, and we are its inhabitants. The journey we are about to embark upon will not take us to distant galaxies, but deep into our own planet's forgotten past. We will treat the Earth itself as a crime scene, a lone witness to a cataclysm so ancient its memory has been scoured from the very rock. We will search for the fingerprints of the engineers of our confinement in the only records that could survive such an immensity of time, in the strange gaps of the geological record, in the chemical composition of our atmosphere, in the anomalous isotopes buried deep within the ice, and finally, in the fragmented, dreamlike echoes of myth that haunt the collective memory of humanity. This is not a search for little green men. It is a search for the ghost of a civilization that may have been our own, and the story of the terrible choice they made to lock us away from the rest of the universe forever. To comprehend the scale of this investigation, we must first confront a concept that defies human intuition: deep time. If the entire 4.5 billion year history of the Earth were compressed into a single calendar year, our species, Homo sapiens, would appear only in the last few minutes of December 31st. All of our recorded history, every empire, every war, every discovery, would flash by in the final seconds before midnight. The timescale we are exploring exists in the vast silent months of this cosmic year, a period so immense that entire mountain ranges can rise and be ground into sand, oceans can open and close, and the continents themselves can dance across the face of the planet. This is the canvas upon which our mystery is painted. We are searching for evidence of an advanced, technological civilization that may have existed not thousands, but hundreds of millions of years ago, buried under a weight of time so profound it acts as the perfect cloak, rendering even the most colossal achievements invisible to a casual glance. This line of inquiry is formally known as the Silurian hypothesis, a thought experiment proposed by scientists Adam Frank and Gavin Schmidt, which asks a simple but profound question. If an industrial civilization existed on Earth millions of years before our own, what traces would it have left behind? How would we even know? The answer forces us to abandon our conventional notions of archaeology. We are not looking for fossilized cities or rusted machinery. Any such artifact would have been subducted into the Earth's mantle, eroded by wind and water, or crushed by glaciers long ago. Instead, we must hunt for what are called techno-signatures, subtle, planetary-scale fingerprints that a high-tech society might leave in the geological, chemical, or atmospheric record. These could be unusual layers of sediment, anomalous isotopic ratios that could only be produced by industrial processes or high-energy physics, or long-term changes in the climate record that defy natural explanation. These are the ghosts in the machine of our planet's history. The greatest challenge to our investigation is the Earth itself. Our planet is not a static museum. It is a dynamic, living system that is constantly recycling its own surface. Plate tectonics, the engine of continental drift, acts as a planetary-scale conveyor belt, slowly but surely dragging the ocean floor and everything on it into the molten mantle, while simultaneously thrusting up new rock through volcanic activity. This process alone ensures that the vast majority of the planet's surface is less than a few 100 million years old. On top of this relentless churn, the forces of erosion, wind, water, and ice work tirelessly to grind down any structure that dares to rise above the surface. A metropolis of glass and steel would be reduced to a layer of dust in a geological blink of an eye. The Earth, in its ceaseless motion, is a self-erasing hard drive. This is why the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It simply means we must look for the scars, not the weapon. Our journey, therefore, begins in the bedrock of the planet, with the first great mystery, the Great Unconformity. This is not a place, but a phenomenon found across the globe, a profound and disturbing gap in the geological record. In places like the Grand Canyon, one can see it with the naked eye, layers of 500-million-year-old sandstone resting directly on top of 1.7 billion-year-old metamorphic rock. In between, more than 1 billion years of Earth's history are simply gone. The conventional explanation is a long period of planetary-scale erosion, but the sheer scale and uniformity of this missing time have always troubled geologists. From our new perspective, we must ask a more unsettling question. What if this wasn't an erosion of rock but an erasure of history? A planetary-scale event that intentionally scoured the surface, wiping the slate clean and burying the evidence of a preceding age so deeply that it would be almost impossible for a future civilization to ever find it. From the silent testimony of the rocks, we turn to the fossil record, the book of life and death. The history of life on Earth is not a smooth, continuous climb of progress. It is a story punctuated by violent, catastrophic mass extinctions. Events like the Permian-Triassic extinction, the Great Dying, which annihilated over 90% of all species on the planet, are typically attributed to random cosmic accidents like asteroid impacts or massive volcanic eruptions. But when viewed through the lens of our thesis, a more sinister pattern emerges. Could these events be more than just bad luck? Could they represent a targeted selective process, a biospheric reset designed to prune the tree of life, preventing any single branch from developing the kind of intelligence and technological capability that could once again threaten the cosmic order or attempt to break the quarantine? It is a chilling thought that the great extinctions were not accidents but interventions designed to keep life on Earth confined and manageable. Our next line of evidence takes us from the macroscopic to the microscopic, into the chemical heart of our planet. If a precursor civilization possessed technology far beyond our own, its industrial byproducts would not be simple plastics or chlorofluorocarbons. We would need to search for the signatures of truly advanced processes, such as controlled high-energy physics or matter manipulation. Incredibly, such clues may exist. Deep ice cores from Antarctica, which provide a pristine chemical record of the atmosphere stretching back hundreds of thousands of years, have revealed trapped micrometeorites containing stable, super-heavy isotopes, elements that cannot be formed naturally in a star like our Sun. Their presence suggests they are not natural, but artificial. They are the potential chemical exhaust of a technology that could engineer matter at the atomic level. A techno-signature of immense power, and a lingering ghost of a capability lost to the ages of deep time. Beyond exotic chemistry, a sufficiently advanced civilization would have wielded energies capable of leaving a permanent mark on the planet's magnetic field. Deep Earth surveys using technology to map the magnetic properties of rock layers thousands of feet below the surface have uncovered strange anomalies in the Precambrian era. In certain locations, there are patterned layers of magnetized rock that do not conform to any known natural process of formation. They are too orderly, too geometric. These patterns are consistent with the energy residue left by a planetary-scale magnetic field being artificially generated or manipulated. Was this the remnant of a defensive shield? The signature of a terrible weapon used in the final, desperate days of a cosmic war? Or could it be the fading echo of the very technology used to construct the cage that now surrounds us, a final act of sacrifice to seal the solar system from an unimaginable threat? But what if the most compelling evidence is not buried in rock or ice, but is hidden in plain sight, encoded within our own collective consciousness? Our investigation now pivots from the hard sciences of geology and chemistry to the realm of human memory, to the universal myths and legends that form the foundation of nearly every culture on Earth. For centuries, we have dismissed these stories as primitive fantasies, the fanciful attempts of our ancestors to explain a world they did not understand. But what if they are something more? What if these myths are the fragmented, distorted, and deeply traumatized memories of real historical events passed down through countless generations as allegory and metaphor? What if humanity is a species with amnesia, and our oldest stories are the faint, recurring nightmares of a past we can no longer consciously recall? Consider the startling consistency of these ancient narratives, shared by cultures separated by vast oceans and thousands of years. There is the universal myth of a war in the heavens, the Greek Titanomachy, the Hindu conflict between the Asuras and Devas, the Norse Ragnarok, all describing a cataclysmic battle among powerful non-human beings that tore the sky apart. There is the persistent story of a golden age, a time when a brilliant advanced civilization lived in harmony, only to be suddenly and violently wiped out by a cataclysm from the sky, often a great flood or fire. And there are the ubiquitous legends of sky gods or creator gods, beings who descended from the stars, imparted knowledge and the seeds of civilization to a primitive humanity, and then departed forever, often with a solemn warning never to reach for the heavens or repeat the mistakes of the past. These are not just stories, they are a potential data set. This reinterpretation of myth allows us to see ancient archaeological sites in a new light. Take Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey, a massive temple complex built 12,000 years ago by what were supposedly simple hunter-gatherers. Its construction predates pottery, writing, and the wheel, yet it displays stunning astronomical alignments and sophisticated artistry. The mainstream view is that it was a religious site. But what if its purpose was not worship, but memory? What if its pillars are not just calendars, but memorials, forever pointing to specific star systems in the night sky? Not as a map for future travel, but as a solemn reminder of where the creators, or perhaps a great enemy, once came from. In this view, the stars are not a frontier for our future, but a graveyard of our past. These ancient sites become the monuments of a post-apocalyptic culture, the inheritors of a forgotten catastrophe. As we stand at the threshold of our deep dive into the evidence, let us synthesize the complete picture our investigation proposes. The null energy shell at the edge of our system is the lock on the door. The great unconformity and the cyclical selective mass extinctions are the scars on the planet, the crime scene left by the ancient cosmic conflict that made the lock necessary. The exotic isotopes and anomalous magnetic signatures are the discarded tools and residual energy of the builders, the faint fingerprints of their incomprehensible technology. And the universal myths of a celestial war and a lost golden age are humanity's inherited dreamlike memory of the event itself. All of these disparate threads of evidence, drawn from every field of human knowledge, point toward a single cohesive and staggering conclusion. A precursor civilization, one that reached the stars, encountered a horrific, expansionist threat, and in a final desperate act, sacrificed its own interstellar future to turn our solar system into an impenetrable sanctuary. The Fermi paradox, the question of where is everybody, is thus solved. No one visits because we are in a deliberately imposed and perhaps merciful quarantine. This thesis does more than just solve a cosmic puzzle, it forces us to confront the very foundations of our identity. The dream of interstellar travel, the drive to expand and explore, may not be our own innate destiny. It could be a ghost, a deeply ingrained biological or spiritual echo of a capacity we once possessed and then lost. The invisible walls of our solar system, which we have long perceived as a challenge to be overcome, may not be a curse, but a profound act of love and protection from our most distant ancestors. This transforms our role in the universe from that of aspiring conquerors to that of protected children, living in a gilded cage we do not understand. The ultimate question that will guide our journey is not just what happened, but what it means for us today. Are we the prisoners, or are we the protected? And what happens if we finally develop the key to unlock our own door? The path ahead will challenge orthodox history and scientific dogma at every turn. We will be piecing together a puzzle from clues that are separated by eons, assembling a case that many will dismiss as impossible. But the greatest truths often begin as heresy. We are not just telling a story, we are following a trail of evidence to its logical, however unsettling conclusion. This is a journey into the deepest knowns and unknowns of our world, a quest to uncover a history that was never meant to be found. If you are a fellow explorer of forgotten histories, ready to question everything, support our journey by hitting the like button, subscribing and letting us know in the comments where in the world you are watching from. The investigation begins now. Our investigation now leaves the theoretical realm of cosmic boundaries and descends into the bedrock of our own world. We must treat the Earth itself as the primary witness, a silent observer that has recorded the events of our deep past in the only language that can survive the eons, the language of stone and bone. Our planet is a crime scene, and the evidence has been buried, weathered, and distorted by millions of years of geological activity. Yet, the scars remain. To find them, we must learn to read the subtle inconsistencies in the official history, to see the gaps not as missing information, but as deliberate redactions. The first and most profound of these redactions is a chasm in time known to geologists as the Great Unconformity. It is a feature found across the globe from the depths of the Grand Canyon to the mountains of Scotland, a stark and unnerving line in the rock where layers from vastly different eras meet with surgical precision. Below this line we find ancient crystalline basement rocks, twisted and metamorphosed, dating back over 1 billion years. Directly on top of them, with no intermediate layers, lies younger sedimentary rock, often from the Cambrian period, around 540 million years ago. An entire chapter of Earth's history, spanning in some places more than 1.2 billion years, is simply gone. The orthodox scientific explanation for this planetary-scale amnesia is an extended period of massive erosion. The theory posits that during the breakup of the supercontinent Rodinia, vast swathes of land were uplifted and then scoured clean by glaciation and weathering over hundreds of millions of years before the seas returned to deposit new layers of sediment. This is a plausible, naturalistic explanation that satisfies the basic observations. However, it fails to account for the disturbing uniformity and razor-sharp flatness of the boundary in many locations. Natural erosion on a planetary scale is a messy, chaotic process. It leaves behind hills, valleys, and remnants of tougher rock. Yet the Great Unconformity often appears as a nearly perfect plane, as if a giant blade had shaved the surface of the planet. From the perspective of our investigation, we must ask a far more chilling question. What if this was not a natural process of erosion, but a deliberate technological act of erasure? What if this billion-year gap represents the scouring of a world, an event designed to wipe the slate clean and bury the evidence of a preceding age so deeply that it would be lost to all but the most persistent future geologists? It is the signature of a cover-up on a scale that defies human imagination. To contemplate such an act requires us to envision a technology far beyond our own comprehension. This would not be a simple matter of demolition or excavation. Erasing 1 billion years of geological history from the face of a planet would necessitate the controlled application of immense energy, a force capable of stripping away kilometers of rock and soil across entire continents with methodical precision. Perhaps it was a form of directed energy weapon, systematically vaporizing the surface layer by layer. Or maybe it was a more subtle manipulation of geological forces, an induced period of hyper-erosion that accelerated natural processes by a factor of millions. The mechanism is almost irrelevant next to the intent. The purpose of such an act would be absolute obliteration. It would not be enough to simply destroy the cities and artifacts of a precursor civilization. One must destroy the very ground upon which they stood, pulverizing their foundations into sterile sand and dust, ensuring that no trace, no ruin, no fossil of their existence could ever be found by a future species, sifting through the shallow layers of the planet's crust. It is the ultimate scorched earth policy, an act of planetary redaction intended to make a forgotten history not just lost, but entirely unknowable. The motive for such a cataclysmic act of planetary engineering can only be understood in the context of our central thesis, the construction of a quarantine. If a precursor civilization fought a devastating war against an interstellar threat, or if they unleashed a technological plague that threatened to consume the galaxy, their final act might have been one of profound sacrifice. To protect the rest of the cosmos from what they had become, or what was hunting them, they would need to ensure that their advanced and perhaps corrupted technology could never be rediscovered. The great unconformity in this light becomes the first and most brutal step in building the prison. Before erecting the invisible walls at the edge of the solar system, the builders first had to sterilize the crime scene. They had to bury their own world, erasing their history to protect the future. This transforms the geological anomaly from a mere curiosity into a monumental tombstone, a silent testament to a civilization that chose to be forgotten so that others, including ourselves, might one day have a chance to live. The missing time is not an absence of rock, it is the presence of a terrible ancient warning. Beneath this great scar of erased time, we find the next chapter of Earth's story, written in the fossil record. This record, the Book of Life and Death, tells a story not of gradual, steady evolution, but of violent, periodic upheavals. The history of life on this planet is punctuated by at least 5 major mass extinction events, catastrophic die-offs that radically reshaped the biosphere. The most devastating of these, the Permian-Triassic extinction event around 252 million years ago, is known as the Great Dying. In a geological blink of an eye, an estimated 96% of all marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrate species were annihilated. The world was plunged into a biological dark age from which it took life over 10 million years to recover. The conventional culprits for this apocalypse are natural disasters of an almost unimaginable scale. The eruption of the Siberian Traps, a volcanic event that covered an area the size of Europe in lava and choked the atmosphere with toxic gases, or perhaps a cataclysmic asteroid impact. These events undoubtedly played a role, but when we examine the victims and survivors, a disturbing pattern emerges that challenges the notion of a purely random catastrophe. The unsettling aspect of the Great Dying and other mass extinctions is their apparent selectivity. They were not always indiscriminate killers. While some events wiped the slate almost clean, others seem to have targeted specific branches on the tree of life with an almost surgical precision. Certain types of complex organisms were eliminated, while other, seemingly more vulnerable ones, survived. The pattern is not always consistent with what we would expect from a simple environmental collapse. It raises the terrifying possibility that these were not entirely natural or accidental events. What if they were, in fact, periodic, targeted interventions? A biospheric reset mechanism designed and executed by a non-human intelligence. In this model, the Earth is a garden, and the extinctions are the work of a gardener who periodically prunes the tree of life, cutting back any branch that grows too quickly towards the dangerous fruit of high intelligence and technological capability. It is a form of planetary management, a chillingly logical method for maintaining the quarantine and ensuring that no native species ever develops the means to challenge the invisible walls of the solar system. This reframing of mass extinctions from cosmic accidents to deliberate interventions forces us to reconsider the very nature of evolution on our planet. The rise of intelligence in Homo sapiens may not have been an inevitable outcome of natural selection, but rather a cosmic fluke, a weed that managed to grow in the garden while the gardener was looking away. Perhaps the previous resets were more efficient, targeting the specific genetic lineages or environmental niches that were most likely to produce a technologically adept species. The Great Dying, for example, cleared the way for the rise of the dinosaurs. When they were wiped out 66 million years ago by another convenient cataclysm, it paved the way for the mammals and eventually for us. Is this simply the chaotic lottery of evolution, or does it represent a repeating cycle of cultivation and culling? Are we the inheritors of a planet that has been periodically sterilized to prevent the emergence of another civilization like the one that necessitated the quarantine in the first place. The fossil record in this light is not a history of life's triumphs, but a logbook of its containment. The potential mechanisms for such a targeted biospheric reset are as terrifying as the concept itself. An advanced civilization would not need a clumsy asteroid. They could employ far more subtle and efficient tools. A tailored retrovirus designed to target the DNA of specific phyla. A nanotechnological plague that dismantles key biological processes at the cellular level. Or perhaps a precisely engineered atmospheric change, altering the composition of the air just enough to be lethal to a target group of organisms while leaving others unscathed. The evidence for such an intervention would be almost impossible to distinguish from a natural catastrophe after millions of years. The telltale signs of artificiality would decay, leaving only the blunt instrument of the extinction event itself for us to find. We are left only with the pattern, the suspicious regularity and selectivity of these events, which whisper of a hidden hand guiding the destiny of life on Earth, ensuring it remains forever bound to its cradle, never again reaching for the stars where ancient horrors might still dwell. Our investigation now drills deeper, past the grand narratives of geology and paleontology, into the subtle language of chemistry. If a precursor civilization existed, particularly an industrial one, it would have inevitably left behind chemical waste. The Silurian hypothesis suggests that we should search for these techno-signatures in the sedimentary layers of the Earth. We are not looking for plastics or concrete, which would have long since degraded or been subducted into the mantle. We must hunt for more resilient clues, anomalous isotopic ratios, unusual concentrations of heavy metals, or synthetic compounds that have no natural origin. These are the chemical ghosts of a lost world, the faint traces of their industry, their power generation, and perhaps their warfare locked away in ancient rock. Finding such a signature would be tantamount to discovering the fossilized footprint of a machine, a definitive sign that our own industrial age was not the first to dawn on this planet. Incredibly, such a clue may already have been found. Around 56 million years ago, at the boundary between the Paleocene and Eocene epochs, our planet experienced a mysterious and rapid global warming event known as the Paleocene-Eocene Thermal Maximum, or PETM. Over a period of just a few thousand years, global temperatures soared by 5 to 8 degrees Celsius, ocean chemistry was thrown into chaos, and a major extinction of deep-sea organisms occurred. The scientific consensus is that this was caused by a massive injection of carbon into the atmosphere, likely from the melting of methane hydrates on the seafloor or from colossal volcanic activity. However, when scientists analyze the specific isotopic signature of the carbon from this period, it presents a puzzle. The ratio of carbon isotopes does not perfectly match a purely natural source. It bears a striking resemblance to the signature produced by the massive, rapid burning of fossil fuels. In essence, the PETM looks disturbingly like a dry run for our own Anthropocene climate crisis, an ancient echo of a world-changing industrial release of carbon. Could the PETM be the chemical tombstone of a previous industrial civilization? It is a staggering thought. Perhaps they, like us, discovered the immense energy potential locked away in fossil fuels. Perhaps they built a global civilization powered by coal, oil, and gas, enjoying a brief period of unprecedented growth and prosperity. And perhaps they, like us, were slow to recognize the consequences, ignoring the warnings until a tipping point was reached, triggering a runaway greenhouse effect that ultimately led to their collapse and extinction. In this scenario, the 56-million-year-old layer of sediment is not just a climate data point. It is a cautionary tale written into the very fabric of the Earth. It suggests that the path of industrial development may lead to a predictable, self-limiting endpoint, a great filter that culls civilizations before they can become truly interstellar. The quarantine, then, might not have been imposed from the outside, but was the inevitable result of this civilization's own technological trajectory. This interpretation of the PETM provides a powerful link in our chain of evidence. It offers a potential identity for the precursors, who may have been involved in the events that led to the solar system's isolation. They may not have been godlike entities, but a civilization much like our own, one that rose, industrialized, and then fell, leaving behind a scarred planet and a faint chemical ghost of its existence. Their story could be one of hubris and failure. Perhaps their catastrophic climate collapse is what drew the attention of a hostile galactic power, forcing the survivors or some other benevolent party to erect the quarantine as a desperate measure. Alternatively, perhaps their collapse was the war itself, a devastating internal conflict fought with planet-altering technologies that left the world uninhabitable and necessitated its sealing. The anomalous carbon signature in the rock is a silent accusation, a fingerprint left at the scene of a 56-million-year-old crime against the biosphere. Beyond the carbon cycle, other, more exotic chemical clues have been found. Analysis of certain geological layers corresponding to periods of environmental stress has revealed puzzling spikes in specific heavy metals, such as osmium, iridium, and platinum. While some of these can be explained by asteroid impacts, others have no clear celestial source. Their isotopic ratios are sometimes inconsistent with meteoritic origin, suggesting a terrestrial but unnatural process. Could these be the faint traces of advanced industrial processes, the byproducts of nuclear technology, high-energy physics experiments, or complex metallurgical activities that concentrated these rare elements in ways that nature cannot easily replicate? We are like forensic investigators, arriving at a scene millions of years too late, finding only the faintest chemical residues. Each anomalous metallic layer, each puzzling isotopic ratio, is another piece of circumstantial evidence suggesting that the history of technology on Earth may be far longer and more tragic than we have ever imagined. These geological and paleontological clues, from the great unconformity to the selective mass extinctions and the chemical ghosts of the PTM, begin to form a coherent, if terrifying, narrative. They are the foundational pieces of evidence in our case. They establish the Earth itself as a witness to a history of immense trauma and deliberate intervention. The planet's crust has been violently erased. The tree of life has been systematically and repeatedly pruned. And the chemical composition of the ancient atmosphere bears the scars of a technology that rose and fell long before the first humans walked the Earth. Each line of evidence on its own can be explained away by a plausible, if sometimes strained, naturalistic hypothesis. But when viewed together through the lens of our thesis, they cease to be a collection of unrelated scientific curiosities. Instead, they become interconnected chapters in the story of a planet that was once the site of a great civilization, a terrible conflict, and a final desperate act of planetary quarantine. The sheer timescale of these events is what makes the case so difficult yet so compelling. We are accustomed to thinking of history in terms of centuries or millennia. This evidence forces us to think in hundreds of millions of years. On these scales, mountains rise and fall, oceans are born and die, and the very face of the planet becomes unrecognizable. This is the ultimate cloak for a hidden history. The Earth's own dynamic geology acts as a self-erasing mechanism, a system that naturally buries its own past. This is why the absence of obvious artifacts like fossilized cities is not evidence of absence. Any such structure would have been ground to dust or subducted into the molten mantle eons ago. We must therefore trust the subtle clues, the scars, the gaps, the chemical residues. These are the only fingerprints that could possibly survive the immense pressure of deep time. They are the echoes of a lost world, and they are telling us that we were not the first. This re-examination of Earth's deep history fundamentally alters our place within it. We are not the pinnacle of a 5 billion-year-old story of life. We may be merely the latest chapter, living in the shadow of a far greater and more tragic one that came before. Our civilization exists on a rebuilt stage, a world that was wiped clean and reset. The very ground beneath our feet is a layered archive of this forgotten past, a library of stone whose most important volumes have been torn out. The conventional narrative of a slow, random, and natural progression of life is replaced by a history of intervention, catastrophe, and intelligent design. Not the design of a benevolent creator, but perhaps of a desperate engineer or a cosmic warden. We are the inhabitants of a post-apocalyptic world, but the apocalypse happened so long ago that we have forgotten it was ever a paradise. The weight of this geological evidence is immense. It suggests that the forces that shaped our world were not limited to the blind mechanics of plate tectonics and natural selection. It implies a history where intelligence and technology played a role on a planetary scale, long before our own species emerged. It paints a picture of a precursor that was powerful enough to permanently alter the geology of the planet and trigger its own climate collapse. This is the civilization whose legacy may be the very quarantine that now defines our existence. Their story is a critical part of understanding our own. Before we can look for clues in the sky or in our own myths, we had to first establish the crime scene. The rocks and fossils have provided their silent testimony. They have shown us the scars of the event and the faint fingerprints of the victim, or perhaps the perpetrator. This line of inquiry requires a profound shift in perspective, a willingness to question the very foundations of geology and paleontology. It demands that we entertain the possibility that the history of our planet is stranger and more complex than we have ever dared to believe. The evidence is not definitive proof, but it is deeply suggestive. It provides a physical, tangible anchor for our investigation, grounding the seemingly fantastical idea of a solar system prison in the real-world data of rock strata and fossil records. The Great Unconformity is a physical fact. The mass extinctions are a documented reality. The PETM is a measured chemical anomaly. Our interpretation connects these disparate facts into a single, cohesive narrative that, while unsettling, is internally consistent and possesses formidable explanatory power. The Earth has spoken, and its story is one of erasure and control. As we conclude this first deep dive into the physical evidence, the scale of our mystery has been firmly established. We are not dealing with a minor historical anomaly, but with forces that have shaped the planet over geological time. The potential engineers of our confinement were not fleeting visitors. They were a civilization capable of planetary engineering, whether by design or by accident. Their actions or their demise were significant enough to leave a permanent scar on the geological record, a wound in the memory of the Earth itself. This is the foundation upon which the rest of our case will be built. The evidence from the rock and the bone has given us a timeline, a context, and a sense of the immense power we are dealing with. It has shown us that our planet has a secret history, one that has been deliberately and violently suppressed. Of all the geological and fossil evidence we've uncovered so far, which piece do you find the most compelling? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Our investigation now shifts from the grand, brutalist scars carved into the planet's geology to the far more subtle and insidious evidence found within its chemistry. We descend from the macroscopic scale of missing eons and mass extinctions to the microscopic world of atoms and isotopes. Here in the silent archives of ice cores, deep-sea sediments and ancient rock layers, we hunt for the chemical ghosts of a precursor civilization. We are searching for their industrial exhaust, their chemical waste, and the lingering radioactive breath of their technology. This is forensic science on a geological timescale. The challenge is immense, as countless millions of years of chemical and biological processes have worked to dilute, transform, and erase these signatures. Yet just as a single anomalous fiber can solve a modern crime, a single out-of-place isotopic ratio can rewrite the history of a world. We are looking for the fingerprints of a machine in the heart of the planetary organism, a definitive sign that our own industrial revolution was not the first to poison the skies and oceans of Earth. The first and most disturbingly familiar of these chemical ghosts is found at a specific boundary in Earth's history, approximately 56 million years ago. This event, known as the Paleocene-Eocene Thermal Maximum, PETM, represents one of the most rapid and extreme global warming events in the geological record. In the span of a few thousand years, a geological instant, the planet's temperature skyrocketed, the oceans became profoundly acidic, and a wave of extinctions swept through marine ecosystems. The orthodox scientific explanation points to a massive natural release of carbon into the atmosphere. most likely from the sudden melting of methane hydrates on the ocean floor or from colossal volcanic eruptions. This injection of greenhouse gases triggered a runaway climate feedback loop. While this naturalistic model is plausible, it struggles to fully account for the sheer speed and isotopic character of the carbon release. When we examine the chemical fingerprint of this ancient catastrophe, it tells a story that is profoundly and chillingly resonant with our own time, suggesting a cause that may not have been natural at all. The key to this mystery lies in the analysis of carbon isotopes. Carbon exists in several forms, primarily the stable isotopes carbon-12 and carbon-13. Living organisms and the fossil fuels derived from them have a strong preference for the lighter carbon-12 isotope. Consequently, when vast quantities of fossil fuels are burned, the atmosphere becomes flooded with carbon-12, altering the global C12-C13 ratio. This is the unmistakable chemical signature of our own industrial civilization. When scientists analyzed the carbon isotopes from the PTM event, preserved in marine sediment cores, they found an isotopic spike, a massive negative carbon isotope excursion, that perfectly mirrors the signature of a colossal rapid release of fossil fuel-derived carbon. The chemical composition of the PETM atmosphere looks uncannily like the result of an ancient industrial civilization burning its planetary reserves of coal, oil, and gas on a staggering scale, an event that would dwarf our own Anthropocene impact to date. This forces us to consider a radical and terrifying hypothesis that the PETM was not a natural climate fluctuation, but the tombstone of a previous industrial age. It suggests the existence of a civilization that followed a developmental path eerily similar to our own. They unearthed the planet's stores of ancient sunlight, built a global infrastructure powered by combustion, and in doing so, triggered a planetary fever from which their world and perhaps their species never recovered. The scale of the carbon release during the PTM is estimated to be so vast that it would imply an industrial output sustained over thousands of years, far exceeding what humanity has yet managed. It paints a picture of a mature, global industrial machine running at full tilt, oblivious or unable to stop the climatic cataclysm it was unleashing. In this light, the 56-million-year-old sediment layer is not a geological curiosity. It is a ghost of our own potential future and a testament to a past that was supposed to remain buried. Further strengthening this industrial hypothesis are other chemical markers found in conjunction with the carbon anomaly. Sediment layers from the PTM period also show significant spikes in heavy metals like mercury, lead, and cadmium. In our own era, these metals are classic indicators of industrial pollution, primarily from the burning of coal. Their synchronized appearance alongside the fossil fuel carbon signature during the PTM creates a forensic profile that is exceptionally difficult to explain through purely natural means, such as volcanism alone, which typically presents a different suite of elemental ratios. It's as if we have found the fossilized pollution of ancient power plants and factories. The Earth's chemical record is telling us, with unsettling precision, that a system of energy production functionally identical to our own once flourished and then catastrophically failed, leaving behind a poisoned and overheated world. This wasn't just a carbon burp, it was the chemical death rattle of a civilization. The implications of an industrial precursor collapse for our central thesis are profound. It provides a potential motive and context for the establishment of the solar system quarantine. Perhaps this civilization's fall was the great calamity that necessitated the sealing of the system. Their self-inflicted ecocide could have been so violent, so complete, that it was deemed a threat of a cosmic order. A species that could so thoroughly wreck its own biosphere might be considered an existential risk if it ever gained access to interstellar travel. In this scenario, the quarantine was not erected to protect them from an outside threat, but to protect the galaxy from them, or from the technological recklessness they represented. The invisible walls of our solar system, then, might be a permanent consequence of this 56-million-year-old industrial sin, a planetary sentence for a crime against life itself. Alternatively, their collapse may have simply been the event that left the solar system vulnerable. the end of the first world that attracted an outside predator or scavenger, forcing a different, benevolent group, perhaps a handful of survivors, to erect the quarantine as a desperate act of preservation. The petty M becomes the inciting incident, the moment of weakness that led to the great cosmic war hinted at in our myths. Regardless of the specific sequence, the chemical evidence of the PETM firmly anchors the possibility of a precursor civilization in the language of hard science. It moves the concept from the realm of abstract speculation into the domain of testable chemical data. The Earth itself, through the silent testimony of its sedimentary layers, bears witness to a global industrial experiment that went horribly wrong, a cautionary tale written in atoms for its successor civilization to one day decipher. Our investigation now moves beyond the familiar chemistry of industrial pollution and into a far more exotic and perplexing realm. If a precursor civilization advanced significantly beyond an industrial phase, their technological byproducts would be correspondingly more sophisticated and strange. We must search for the signatures of post-industrial processes such as controlled nuclear reactions, high-energy physics, and perhaps even matter manipulation. These technologies would leave behind chemical fingerprints that are not just unusual, but physically impossible to create through any known natural process on Earth or even in our Sun. Finding such a signature would be irrefutable proof of artificiality. Incredibly deep within the pristine ice sheets of Antarctica and in undisturbed sediment cores from the deepest parts of the ocean, scientists have found exactly these kinds of impossible clues, stable, super-heavy isotopes that should not exist. Ice cores, drilled from miles deep in the Antarctic ice sheet, provide a perfect, layered archive of Earth's atmospheric history, stretching back nearly 1 million years. Trapped within this ice are microscopic particles of dust and micrometeorites that fell from the sky in ancient times. When these particles are analyzed with mass spectrometers, they occasionally reveal the presence of elements with atomic weights far beyond anything found on the periodic table, such as elements in the range of 260 to 300 AMU, atomic mass units. Crucially, some of these isotopes are remarkably stable. According to our current understanding of nuclear physics, elements this heavy can only be created in the most extreme cosmic events, like the collision of two neutron stars, and they are typically hyper-unstable, decaying in fractions of a second. To find them here on Earth in stable forms is a profound anomaly that defies conventional explanation. The presence of these stable, super-heavy elements suggests a local, and therefore artificial, origin. No known natural phenomenon in our solar system can produce them. A nearby supernova or neutron star merger would have bathed the entire planet in radiation and left a much broader, more obvious signature. The isolated, concentrated nature of these findings within specific thin geological layers points towards a more contained and deliberate source. This is the potential chemical exhaust of a technology that could engineer matter at the subatomic level. It could be the byproduct of a contained fusion power source, far more advanced than our own experimental reactors, or the residue of a propulsion system that manipulated the fabric of space-time itself. We are looking at the discarded atomic ash of a technology so advanced it borders on what we would consider magic, a ghost of a capability that could build or destroy on a planetary scale. These anomalous isotopic layers do not appear randomly. They often correlate with periods of significant climatic upheaval or with the boundaries of smaller extinction events, linking this exotic chemical evidence back to the paleontological record. It's as if these high-energy events were happening in Earth's vicinity, or even on its surface, and the fallout was significant enough to be recorded globally. This raises a chilling question. Are we looking at the byproducts of a precursor's peaceful technological activity, or are we seeing the chemical scars of their conflict? Could these impossible elements be the unique radioactive fallout from the weapons used in the war in the heavens? A war fought not with crude fission bombs, but with devices that could create and transmute elements, weapons whose residual signatures would be utterly alien to a species like our own. The scientific establishment, when confronted with this data, typically resorts to explanations at the very edge of theoretical physics, positing the existence of undiscovered natural phenomena or unknown astrophysical events. But these explanations often require a greater leap of faith than the hypothesis of a technological origin. They require us to believe in a series of incredibly rare, conveniently timed cosmic accidents that just happen to mimic the expected signature of advanced technology. The principle of Occam's razor, that the simplest explanation is often the correct one, suggests we should seriously consider the possibility that these are exactly what they appear to be, the manufactured products of a non-human or pre-human intelligence. They are artifacts, no different from a clay pot or a flint arrowhead, just infinitely more sophisticated and resilient to the ravages of time. If these isotopes are indeed the residue of the engineers or their adversaries, they provide a crucial piece of the puzzle. They give us a sense of the sheer technological disparity between their civilization and ours. The energy required to synthesize stable, super-heavy elements is colossal, suggesting a mastery over the fundamental forces of nature that we can only dream of. This is the level of technology that would be required to undertake a project as ambitious as constructing a planetary quarantine system. The null energy shell at the edge of the Oort cloud suddenly seems less fantastical when we find potential evidence of the underlying physics right here on Earth, buried in the ice. The chemical fingerprints of the builders are consistent with the scale of the prison they are alleged to have built. The implications are staggering. We are living on a planet that may have been a battlefield or a laboratory for a civilization that could engineer the atom itself. The very ground beneath our feet could be seeded with the microscopic remnants of their power, their industry, and their wars. This evidence transforms the nature of our search. We are no longer just looking for a forgotten history. We are potentially uncovering the remnants of a lost physics, a lost science that was powerful enough to leave permanent, anomalous traces in the planetary chemistry. The stable super-heavy isotopes are a quiet but profound testament to a power that once existed in our solar system, a power whose ultimate purpose, creation or destruction, remains the central question of our investigation. From the atomic nucleus, our search for techno-signatures now expands to the realm of planetary fields. A sufficiently advanced civilization would not only manipulate matter, but would also harness and project energy on a massive scale. Such activities, whether for power generation, defense, or planetary engineering, would inevitably interact with and alter the Earth's natural magnetic field. Over geological time, these artificial magnetic fluctuations would be recorded in the planet's crust. The study of this phenomenon, known as paleomagnetism, allows us to read the history of the Earth's magnetic field, which is frozen into iron-bearing rocks as they cool or settle. For the most part, this record shows the expected patterns of a natural geomagnetic dynamo, slow, chaotic wanderings, and periodic reversals of the north and south poles. But in certain deep, ancient rock formations from the Precambrian era, surveys have detected anomalies that defy this natural explanation. These are not random fluctuations. Deep Earth surveys, often conducted for mineral or oil exploration, have revealed highly structured geometric patterns of magnetic intensity locked within rock layers billions of years old. Instead of the gentle, sweeping curves of a natural field, these patterns appear as grids, concentric circles, or unnaturally linear formations of alternating magnetic polarity. They look less like a geological feature and more like a blueprint or a circuit diagram etched into the planetary crust. Natural processes simply do not create this level of geometric order in the magnetic record over vast areas. It is the signature of an artificial field, a powerful organized magnetic force being imposed upon the planet's natural one, leaving a permanent fossil of its presence in the rock. What kind of technology could create such a planetary-scale magnetic fossil? The possibilities are as fascinating as they are terrifying. It could be the remnant of a global energy grid, one that used the Earth's own magnetic field for the wireless transmission of power. Or perhaps it was a planetary defense shield, a magnetic force field designed to protect against cosmic radiation or hostile weaponry, which, when overloaded or catastrophically failed, burned its pattern into the crust below. Another possibility is that it is the signature of a powerful weapon system, a device that used focused magnetic fields to induce earthquakes or manipulate the climate. The geometric precision is the key. It speaks of design, of intent, and of a technology that operated not on a local, but on a truly global scale, treating the entire planet as a single integrated system. This evidence connects directly and powerfully to our thesis of a planetary quarantine. The construction of the invisible walls surrounding our solar system, particularly the null energy shell, would have required the generation and control of immense electromagnetic fields. It is conceivable, even likely, that the machinery for such a project was based, at least in part, on Earth itself. The anomalous magnetic patterns in the Precambrian rock could be the fading echo of this very construction project. We could be looking at the magnetic footprint of the power plants, projectors, or stabilizers that were used to erect the prison walls. In this view, the Earth was not just the place being quarantined, it was also the construction yard. The engineers used the planet itself as a tool to build the cage, leaving behind the scars of their work in its deepest magnetic memory. The controversy surrounding this evidence stems from its inaccessibility. These magnetic anomalies are often detected thousands of feet below the surface, and the data is frequently the proprietary information of resource exploration companies, not widely available for public academic study. Those who have analyzed it often dismiss the patterns as coincidental artifacts of data processing or as yet unexplained natural phenomena. However, the persistence and geometric regularity of these patterns across different continents, reported by different survey teams, suggest they are a real and profound mystery. It is a line of evidence that remains tantalizingly at the edge of scientific confirmation, a ghost in the machine of geophysics that hints at a history far stranger than the one we accept. When we synthesize these disparate lines of chemical and atmospheric evidence, a chillingly consistent narrative emerges. We see a progression. First, the evidence of the PTM suggests a civilization that was industrial, much like our own, one that burned fossil fuels on a massive scale and ultimately succumbed to a self-inflicted climate catastrophe. Following this, or perhaps concurrent with it in a different era, we find the evidence of a far more advanced technology in the exotic isotopes, a post-industrial nuclear age civilization that could manipulate matter at the atomic level. And finally, in the deepest layers of the planet's memory, we find the magnetic signatures of a truly planetary-scale engineering capability, a civilization that could wield and shape the fundamental fields of the world itself. It is a story of technological evolution, written in the chemical and physical language of the Earth. This progression tells us that we are not just looking for a single, monolithic, precursor civilization. It is possible that the Earth has hosted more than one, or that a single civilization existed for an immense period of time, evolving through technological stages that we are only just beginning to enter. The story may be more complex, a long and tragic history of multiple cycles of rise and fall, of technological advancement followed by cataclysm. Each cycle left its own unique chemical and physical ghost in the record for us to find. The PETM is the ghost of their industrial age. The exotic isotopes are the ghost of their nuclear age. The magnetic anomalies are the ghost of their planetary engineering age. Together, they form a composite sketch of the beings whose legacy is the very confinement of our world. This evidence profoundly challenges the principle of mediocrity, the idea that our civilization's experiences are typical. The chemical record suggests that we may be reliving a history that has already played out on this very planet. Our current struggle with climate change, our nascent steps into nuclear power, these may be echoes of a path trod long ago. The difference is that the previous traveler on this path either destroyed themselves or encountered something that led to the entire solar system being locked down. The chemical and physical evidence does not just speak of a lost history, it serves as a dire warning. The techno-signatures we are finding are not just curiosities, they are signposts on a road that may lead to a similar fate of collapse or containment. The weight of this forensic evidence is substantial. While each individual anomaly can be debated or assigned a speculative naturalistic cause, their cumulative effect is powerful. The convergence of evidence from multiple independent fields, geochemistry, nuclear physics, and paleomagnetism, all pointing towards the same general conclusion, is the hallmark of a strong scientific case. It creates a web of interconnected data points that is much harder to dismiss than any single clue. The Earth's chemical and physical records are not a random collection of oddities. They are a coherent, if fragmented, narrative of a technological past, a story of immense power, great ambition, and ultimately a catastrophe so profound that its consequences still define the boundaries of our world today. We are left with a picture of a precursor, or precursors who were not just builders or inhabitants, but were chemists and physicists on a planetary scale. They altered the carbon cycle, synthesized impossible elements, and reshaped the planet's magnetic field. They were, in a word, gods by our standards, yet they were not immortal. They fell, and the evidence of their fall is all around us, infused into the very substance of our world. Their story is a crucial foundation for understanding the final pieces of our puzzle. Having examined the physical scars on the planet and the chemical ghosts in its systems, we must now turn to the most fragile and distorted record of all, the echoes of these immense events as they have survived in the myths and memories of the species that inherited the silent, quarantined Earth, humanity itself. Having scoured the planet's physical body for evidence, examining its scarred geology and poisoned chemistry, our investigation now turns to its soul, the collective consciousness of humanity. We leave the hard sciences and enter the far more fragile and contentious realm of myth, archaeology, and memory. If a global technological civilization existed and was wiped out in a cataclysm so profound it necessitated the quarantine of an entire solar system, is it conceivable that no memory of this event survived? The answer, we propose, is that the memory did survive, but not as clear factual history. It survived as a deeply embedded trauma, a recurring planetary nightmare passed down through countless generations, not as data, but as story, symbol, and sacred rite. We are a species with amnesia, and our oldest, most universal myths are not primitive fantasies. They are the fragmented, dreamlike echoes of a history we have forgotten we ever lived. They are the last and most human piece of evidence in our search for the builders of our prison. To begin this forensic analysis of memory, we must first recognize a stunning and inexplicable fact. Cultures separated by impassable oceans and thousands of years of disconnected history all tell the same foundational stories. This is the mystery of the universal mythos. If these narratives were mere products of local imagination, we would expect a wild, chaotic diversity. Instead, we find a consistent, repeating pattern of core archetypes. There is the story of a golden age, a time when a brilliant, advanced civilization lived in a state of grace. This is inevitably followed by a war in the heavens, a cataclysmic conflict between powerful, godlike beings that tears the world apart. This war culminates in a great cataclysm, often a global flood or fire, that wipes the slate clean. Finally, there are the tales of the creator gods or civilizer heroes, survivors or visitors, who descend from the sky to gift the primitive remnants of humanity with the seeds of a new civilization before departing forever, often with a solemn warning. These are not just parallels, they are the distinct chapters of a single, coherent, and globally remembered historical trauma. Let us dissect the first of these echoes, the war in the heavens. In ancient Greece, it was the Titanomachy, a decade-long war between the old gods and the new that shook the foundations of the cosmos. In Hindu scripture, it is the perpetual conflict between the Devas and the Asuras, fought with flying vehicles called Vimanas, and weapons capable of incinerating entire armies. For the Norse, it was the prophecy of Ragnarok, the final battle that would see gods and giants destroy each other and the world itself. Mainstream scholarship dismisses these as allegories for the chaos of nature or human social conflict. But viewed through the lens of our investigation, they become something far more literal. They are the distorted, mythologized accounts of the real, technological war fought by the precursor civilization. The gods were not supernatural beings. They were the pilots, soldiers, and scientists of two warring factions, wielding energies and weapons so powerful that to a primitive observer, They could only be described as divine. The sky-rending battles and earth-shattering explosions were not metaphor, they were history. Following the war, or perhaps triggering it, is the memory of a lost paradise, the Golden Age. Plato wrote of Atlantis, a magnificent island empire with technology and wisdom beyond his own time, which was swallowed by the sea in a single day and night of misfortune. The traditions of nearly every culture speak of a similar ancient time, a world without suffering, where knowledge was abundant and humanity lived in harmony with a higher order. We have long interpreted these stories as expressions of nostalgia, a yearning for a simpler, imaginary past. But what if they are a genuine, albeit romanticized memory of the precursor civilization before its fall? What if humanity, in its current primitive form, is the descendant of the traumatized, scattered survivors of that fallen world? This reframes our entire history. We are not a species that has risen from the mud. We are a species that is struggling to climb out of the rubble of a forgotten, far greater past. The myth of the Golden Age is the faint ancestral memory of the world that was lost, the world that existed before the war, before the cataclysm, before the prison walls were built. The most specific and pervasive memory of this cataclysm is the Great Flood. The story of a world-drowning deluge is not unique to the Epic of Gilgamesh or the biblical tale of Noah. It is found in over 500 cultures across the globe, from the Americas to Australia, in societies that had no possible contact with one another. The orthodox explanation is that these are memories of local, catastrophic floods, a river overflowing its banks, a tsunami, that were then exaggerated into a global myth. But the sheer universality and detailed similarity of these stories challenge such a simple dismissal. In our thesis, the Great Flood was not a local event. It was a global historical reality, a direct consequence of the precursor war. The weapons used could have flash-melted polar ice caps, destabilized the planet's crust to cause massive tsunamis, or even gravitationally manipulated the oceans. The flood was the Great Cleansing, the event that washed away the physical evidence of the old world, scouring the continents and burying the last remnants of the Golden Age under miles of mud and water, leaving only a handful of survivors to begin again in a new empty world. From the waters of this post-apocalyptic world emerge the final figures of the mythic cycle, the creator gods, or civilizer heroes. In Sumerian lore, it was Oannes, a fish-like being who came from the sea to teach humanity writing, mathematics, and law. For the Aztecs, it was Quetzalcoatl, a pale, bearded god who arrived from the east, bringing knowledge of agriculture and the calendar. For cultures across the world, these beings are remembered as the bringers of light, the teachers who lifted humanity from savagery. Crucially, after their work is done, they always depart, returning to the stars from whence they came. And often their departure is accompanied by a prophecy or a warning, a promise to return, but also a strict prohibition. Do not seek to follow us. Do not repeat the mistakes that led to the great destruction. Do not reach for the heavens. This is not just a religious taboo. It is the quarantine's instruction manual passed down through the ages as divine law. It is the final act of the builders, instilling in their protected descendants a deep-seated cultural and psychological fear of the stars, ensuring the prison remains locked from the inside. This inherited knowledge was not limited to moral warnings. It appears to have included specific, highly technical data that should have been impossible for ancient peoples to possess. Our investigation now turns to the mystery of anomalous astronomical knowledge, the ghost of a forgotten science. The most famous and perplexing case is that of the Dogon people of Mali in West Africa. In the 1930s, French anthropologists recorded the Dogon's sacred secret traditions, which described the star system of Sirius in breathtaking detail. The Dogon knew that Sirius, the brightest star in our sky, was not a single star but a binary system. They described its companion, Sirius B, as incredibly small, incredibly heavy, and composed of a special metal not found on Earth, a perfect description of a white dwarf star. They also knew its orbital period was 50 years, and that it moved in an elliptical, not circular path around Sirius A, The problem is that Sirius B is completely invisible to the naked eye. Its existence was only confirmed by modern astronomy in the 19th century, and it was not photographed until 1970. How could a pre-industrial isolated tribe possess this knowledge? The mainstream scientific explanation is one of cultural contamination. The theory posits that the Dogon learned these facts from a visiting missionary or ethnographer in the early 20th century who had access to contemporary astronomical knowledge. The Dogon, the theory goes, then cleverly integrated this new information into their existing mythology to impress the outsiders. This is a plausible, mundane explanation that would neatly resolve the anomaly. However, it fails to convince many researchers who have studied the Dogon culture. The knowledge of Sirius is not a superficial addition. It is woven into the very fabric of their oldest and most complex rituals and sacred ceremonies, suggesting an origin far more ancient than a casual conversation a few decades ago. The Dogon themselves are adamant that this knowledge was given to them in the distant past by the Nommo, amphibious sky gods who descended to Earth in an ark. Viewed through the lens of our thesis, the Dogon's knowledge takes on a new and profound significance. It is not evidence of recent alien visitation. It is a cultural fossil, a piece of inherited data from the precursor civilization. The Nommo were not aliens. They were the survivors or engineers of the quarantine, the same beings who imparted the seeds of civilization after the Great Cataclysm. The information about Sirius was not an arbitrary astronomy lesson. It was a directional marker, a signpost pointing to their place of origin, or perhaps to the origin of the enemy that brought about the Great War. They were embedding a crucial piece of their history into the deep culture of their inheritors, preserving it in the only medium that could survive the fall of civilizations and the passage of millennia: sacred ritual. The impossible knowledge of the Dogon is a data fragment that has survived the shipwreck of a world, a single pristine file recovered from a corrupted hard drive. The Dogon are not alone. Similar astronomical anachronisms are found in the records of the Sumerians, who possessed detailed knowledge of the outer planets of our solar system, including Uranus and Neptune, millennia before their official discovery. The Mayan calendar, the Tzolk'in, was based on cycles of the Pleiades star cluster and demonstrated a knowledge of the Earth's precessional cycle, a 26,000-year wobble, with an accuracy that our own science only achieved in the modern era. These are not lucky guesses. They are the fingerprints of a sophisticated, global science that existed in deep antiquity. The conventional model of history, which posits a linear progression from primitive ignorance to modern enlightenment, simply cannot account for these profound spikes of advanced knowledge in our distant past. They are echoes of a lost science, a legacy from a civilization that understood the cosmos in ways we are only just beginning to rediscover. If the precursors left behind echoes in our memory and fragments of their knowledge, is it possible they also left behind physical hardware? This brings us to the final and most controversial line of cultural evidence: out-of-place artifacts, or UPARTs. These are manufactured objects of a technological complexity or from a geological context that completely contradicts the accepted timeline of human history. While the field is littered with hoaxes and misinterpretations, a few key examples defy easy explanation and demand serious consideration. These are the potential broken tools, the discarded remnants of the precursors' technology, which have survived against impossible odds. They are the tangible ghosts that connect the mythic memories to a physical, technological reality, suggesting the gods were not just beings of light and story, but were engineers and mechanics who built real machines. The undisputed king of all UPARTs is the Antikythera mechanism. Discovered in 1901 in a Roman-era shipwreck off the coast of a Greek island, this device is an object of breathtaking complexity. Dated to around 100 BCE, it is a shoebox-sized contraption of at least 30 interlocking bronze gears. For decades, its purpose was a mystery, but with modern X-ray tomography, we have finally deciphered its function. It was an astronomical analog computer of astonishing sophistication. By turning a single crank, the user could accurately predict the positions of the Sun, Moon, and the 5 known planets, the timing of lunar and solar eclipses, and even the cycle of the Olympic Games. The level of mechanical engineering and theoretical astronomical knowledge required to build such a device is simply not supposed to have existed in the ancient world. Nothing approaching its complexity appears again in the historical record for another 1,400 years, with the astronomical clocks of medieval Europe. The mainstream historical view is that the Antikythera mechanism represents a lost pinnacle of Hellenistic Greek genius, a branch of technology that was brilliant but ultimately a dead end, forgotten and lost during the decline of the Roman Empire. It is seen as a singular, anomalous achievement. Our thesis, however, offers a different, more compelling explanation. The mechanism was not a brilliant invention created from scratch. It was a degraded copy, a piece of reverse-engineered legacy technology. The Greek artisans who built it were not innovators. They were inheritors attempting to replicate a far more ancient and sophisticated device they no longer fully understood, a piece of the divine technology left behind by the precursors. This would explain why it appears so suddenly in the record with no clear technological predecessors, and why the knowledge behind it vanished so completely. It wasn't their knowledge to begin with. The Antikythera mechanism is a tangible link in the chain of inheritance, a piece of the Golden Age's hardware that survived the flood. The extreme rarity of credible OO parts, like the Antikythera mechanism, is not an argument against our thesis, but rather a powerful argument for it. We must remember the evidence from Act 3, the Great Unconformity. The planet's surface was deliberately and violently scoured, and the world was then drowned in a global flood. Under these conditions, the default expectation should be that 0 physical artifacts would survive. The fact that anything survived at all is a near miracle. An object like the Antikythera mechanism could only have been preserved by the 1 in a billion chance of being sealed in a shipwreck, protected from the elements for 2 millennia. The vast majority of precursor technology would have been pulverized, corroded, subducted into the Earth's mantle, or buried under miles of sediment. The absence of evidence is precisely what we should expect from such a successful and thorough erasure of history. The few OO parts we find are the exceptions that prove the rule, the lucky survivors of a planetary-scale destruction. As we conclude this examination of humanity's cultural memory, the disparate threads of myth, anomalous knowledge, and impossible artifacts weave together into a single cohesive tapestry. The stories are the narrative of the event. The astronomical data is the science of the fallen civilization. The artifacts are the remnants of its technology. From every corner of the world and from every branch of human expression, the echoes of the same great story rebound. We were not the first. We are the children of a global catastrophe, living in the ruins of a forgotten golden age. The beings we remember as gods were the flesh and blood ancestors, or engineers who fought a terrible war, reset the world, and left us with a legacy of fragmented knowledge and a sacred injunction never to repeat their mistakes. The cultural evidence transforms our investigation from a geological and chemical hypothesis into a deeply human story of loss, survival, and inherited memory. The Earth is not just a prison, it is a nursery, and our myths are the lullabies meant to keep us from looking too closely at the bars of our own crib. Do you believe these ancient myths are just stories, or are they the echoes of a real, forgotten history? Share your perspective below. Our investigation has taken us through the deep archives of stone, fossil, and chemistry, and into the dreamlike echoes of human memory. We have assembled a case built on planetary scars, chemical ghosts, and the universal trauma of myth. But now, we must journey to the last and most isolated place on Earth, a continent sealed under miles of ice and frozen in time, a place where the planet's oldest and most profound secrets might lie in perfect preservation. We turn our attention to Antarctica. This is not merely a landmass, it is a time capsule, a pristine witness that has been locked away from the relentless churn of erosion and biological activity for millions of years. If there is one place on this planet where a tangible physical remnant of a precursor civilization could survive, it is here, entombed beneath the ice sheet. Our final and most shocking piece of terrestrial evidence does not come from a scattered isotopic signature or a fragmented story, but from a single colossal anomaly detected beneath the frozen wasteland, a structure so vast and inexplicable that it threatens to shatter the very foundations of our accepted history. The discovery was made not with drills or shovels, but with the invisible eyes of modern science. Using data from NASA's GRACE satellites, which map the Earth's gravitational field with incredible precision, and ground-penetrating radar that can peer through miles of solid ice, scientists were exploring a region of East Antarctica known as Wilkes Land. There, buried deep beneath the ice sheet, they detected a gravitational anomaly of staggering proportions. It is a massive circular disturbance in the Earth's gravity field, over 300 miles wide, centered perfectly within a 500-kilometer impact crater. The official scientific explanation is that this is a mascon, or mass concentration, likely a colossal, dense, metallic remnant of the asteroid that created the crater, combined with an upwelling of denser mantle material from below. This is a plausible, naturalistic explanation for a massive gravitational reading. But as we have learned, the most profound truths are often hidden within the details that the official explanation fails to address, and the Wilkes Land anomaly contains details that are deeply and unnervingly unnatural. While the mascon theory accounts for the sheer mass of the anomaly, it struggles to explain its incredible structure and symmetry. Subsequent radar surveys, designed to map the bedrock topography beneath the ice, have revealed something that defies a purely geological origin. The radar returns from the center of the anomaly do not show the chaotic, fractured landscape of a typical impact crater's central uplift. Instead, they paint a picture of something with a disturbing degree of geometric order. The data hints at a complex of straight lines, right angles, and concentric patterns on a scale that dwarfs any known human construction. It looks less like a geological feature and more like the blueprint of a colossal buried metropolis or a massive technological installation. The gravitational anomaly may not be a simple plug of dense rock. It may be the signature of a vast, artificial structure, built from materials so dense and resilient that they have not only survived the initial cataclysmic impact, but have also withstood the crushing weight of a 2-mile-thick ice sheet for millions of years. This is the final shocking clue our investigation has been searching for: the potential discovery of a precursor city, frozen and intact, a silent testament to the golden age our myths remember. The sheer scale of this potential complex is difficult to comprehend. A structure over 300 miles in diameter would be a feat of mega engineering far beyond our own capabilities, suggesting a civilization that could manipulate matter and energy on a planetary scale. This is not just a ruin, it is a piece of hardware. In the context of our thesis, its purpose becomes a subject of chilling speculation. Was this a civilian capital, the Atlantis of the Antarctic, flash frozen in the instant of the cataclysm that necessitated the quarantine? Or was it something more significant? A military fortress, a planetary defense headquarters from the great War in the Heavens? Or most disturbingly, could this be the control center for the quarantine itself, a dormant piece of the very machinery that maintains the invisible walls around our solar system? The existence of such a structure forces us to reconsider the very history of the Antarctic continent itself. We assume that its ice sheet formed through natural climatic processes over the last 30 million years. But what if this glaciation was not entirely natural? What if the final act of the precursor war, or the final act of the quarantine's construction, was a deliberate act of geoengineering designed to conceal this last great secret? A targeted atmospheric or orbital weapon could have plunged the entire continent into a permanent artificial ice age, burying this facility so deeply that it would be effectively lost to any future civilization that might arise on the planet's surface. The ice, then, is not a natural feature. It is a tombstone, the final seal on the most important secret in the history of the world. The continent is not a wilderness. It is a vault, and we have only just detected the faint outline of the door. This Antarctic anomaly is the linchpin that connects all the disparate threads of our investigation. The great unconformity was the erasure of the world's surface, but Antarctica was spared and then sealed. The mass extinctions were the pruning of the tree of life, but this structure survived, a root of the old world buried too deep to be cut. The chemical ghosts were the residue of their technology, and here we may have found the engine room itself. The myths were the fragmented memories of the catastrophe, and now we have a potential ground zero. The structure beneath the Wilkes land ice is the physical, tangible X that marks the spot on our crime scene map of planet Earth. It transforms the quarantine hypothesis from a compelling narrative into a theory with a testable physical location. It is the final and most profound piece of evidence suggesting that we are living on a planet that holds the ruins of a history far greater and more terrible than our own. As we stand on the precipice of this discovery, the pieces of the puzzle lock into place with a terrifying click. The evidence from the deepest rock, the most subtle chemistry, the most ancient memories, and now the most impenetrable ice, all point in the same direction. They tell the story of a world that was once home to a civilization of unimaginable power, a civilization that faced a crisis of cosmic proportions and was either wiped out or forced into a desperate final act of self-imprisonment. The anomaly in Antarctica is no longer just an anomaly, it is a destination. It is the focal point of the entire mystery, the ultimate prize for a species bold enough to drill through its own forgotten history. It is the final clue presented by our silent planet, a silent invitation to uncover the truth of our confinement, and in doing so to finally understand who or what we are. The journey of our investigation has now reached its apex. For acts, we have moved as forensic detectives through the immense crime scene of deep time, collecting disparate and baffling clues. We have sifted through the ashes of geology, deciphered the chemical ghosts of a lost technology, listened to the fevered dreams of our own species, and located a final impossible fingerprint frozen at the bottom of the world. Now, we cease our search for new evidence. The time has come for the grand synthesis, the moment we step back from the scattered pieces and finally see the complete and staggering image they form. This is the point where the fragments coalesce, where the whispers become a single, coherent voice, and where the full terrifying and magnificent scope of our planet's secret history is revealed. We will now connect every thread, from the edge of our solar system to the bedrock of our world, to construct the final, inescapable narrative of our quarantine and the civilization that built it. The picture that emerges is not just a theory, it is the logical conclusion of the evidence we have followed, a story that rewrites everything we thought we knew about our place in the cosmos. The first and final piece of our puzzle, the alpha and the omega of our confinement, is that impossible null-energy shell detected at the outermost fringe of our solar system. This is the lock on our door. It is the physical manifestation of the boundary, the definitive proof that our celestial home is not an open system, but a sealed one. Its existence, defying all known natural physics, serves as the frame for our entire picture. But a lock is meaningless without understanding why it was put there. To comprehend its purpose, we must look inside the locked room, at the state of the planet it was designed to contain. The shell is the conclusion of the story, but the story itself is written upon the face of the Earth. The razor-thin boundary in the Oort cloud is the final silent statement of a cataclysmic event, and its presence demands that we re-examine every geological and biological anomaly on our world, not as a random act of nature, but as a potential clue to the crime that necessitated such an extreme measure of containment. This act of planetary redaction then explains the first and most profound scar upon our world, the Great Unconformity. This billion-year gap in the geological record is no longer a mere curiosity of erosion. It is the direct physical evidence of the crime scene being scrubbed. Before the lock could be placed on the door, the evidence within the room had to be destroyed. The unimaginable energy required to scour entire continents, to shave away a billion years of rock and history, was the first and most brutal step in establishing the quarantine. It was an act of absolute obliteration, designed to ensure that the technology, the biology, and the very memory of the precursor civilization were buried so deeply they could never be found. The Great Unconformity is the signature of a cover-up on a planetary scale, the necessary precursor to the final sealing of the system. The empty pages in Earth's stone diary were not lost, they were deliberately torn out. But the quarantine was not a single act of construction. It required a system of perpetual maintenance. This is the chilling purpose behind the cyclical and selective mass extinctions we find in the fossil record. They are not random cosmic accidents, they are the periodic targeted pruning of the tree of life. After the initial threat was contained and its world sterilized, the builders or wardens of the quarantine needed to ensure that no subsequent life form on Earth would ever evolve to a point where it could once again develop interstellar technology and threaten to break the seal. The Great Dying and other extinctions were biospheric resets, a form of planetary management designed to cull intelligence before it could blossom. We Homo sapiens are a cosmic fluke, a weed that grew in the garden while the gardener was looking away. The fossil record is therefore not a story of life's triumph, but a logbook of its carefully managed containment, a testament to the long-term enforcement of our isolation. But who were the agents of this erasure and control? What kind of beings could wield such power? The answer lies in the chemical ghosts we have uncovered. The anomalous stable super-heavy isotopes found in ice cores and ancient sediments are the gunpowder residue of their physics. These elements, which cannot be created naturally in our solar system, are the definitive techno-signature of a civilization that had achieved mastery over matter itself. This was the technology that could power the scouring of a planet or wage a war with star-shattering energies. Furthermore, the strange geometric magnetic patterns fossilized in Precambrian rock are the echo of the machinery they used. They are the footprint of a planetary-scale energy grid, or defensive shield, the very tool that could have been used to project the forces necessary to erect the null energy shell at the system's edge. The exotic chemistry proves their capability, and the magnetic anomalies show us the faint blueprint of how they did it. With the crime scene established and the culprit's technology identified, we must turn to the only surviving witness, humanity itself. We are the amnesiac inheritors of this cosmic war, and our universal myths are our fragmented, traumatized testimony. The story of a golden age is the faint ancestral memory of the precursor civilization in its prime. The war in the heavens is not an allegory, but the literal mythologized account of the conflict that brought about their downfall, fought by beings whose technology was indistinguishable from divinity. The Great Flood was the aftermath, the weaponized or consequential cleansing of the planet that washed away the old world. Finally, the creator gods who descended to give knowledge to the survivors were the builders of the quarantine themselves, imparting the seeds of a new, controlled civilization and, most importantly, instilling in us a sacred, terrified reverence for the stars, a psychological lock to complement the physical one they had built. This inherited memory was not just story, it included corrupted data files from the lost world. The impossible astronomical knowledge of the Dogon and the Sumerians, and the breathtaking technological anachronism of the Antikythera mechanism are the cultural fossils of the precursor's science. They are the broken pieces of hardware and the fragmented lines of code that survived the Great System crash. These artifacts prove that the beings of myth were not spirits or gods in the supernatural sense. They were engineers, scientists, and technicians. They bridge the gap between the grand, violent narrative of planetary change and a tangible technological reality. We did not invent science. We are merely rediscovering the broken fragments of a science that once ruled this world, a science that ultimately led to its own confinement. Our myths are the user manual for our prison, written in a language we have long forgotten how to read. All of these threads of evidence, the geological, the chemical, and the cultural, lead us to one final physical location on the map. The colossal gravitational and structural anomaly buried beneath the ice of Wilkes Land, Antarctica, is the X that marks the spot. This is the ground zero. While the rest of the world was scoured, Antarctica was sealed, flash frozen to become a vault for the greatest secret in history. The 300-mile-wide geometric structure is not a random geological formation. It is the last surviving city, the military headquarters, or the central control system for the quarantine itself. It is the tangible linchpin that connects every other piece of evidence. It is the physical remnant of the Golden Age, the target or command center of the war in the heavens, and the reason for the continent's artificial glaciation. The Antarctic anomaly transforms our entire case from a compelling hypothesis into a testable reality with a physical destination. And so, the complete picture takes its final, breathtaking form. Eons ago, a technologically advanced civilization, the precursors, arose on Earth and reached the stars. There they encountered a hostile expansionist force, or perhaps unleashed a technological contagion of their own. A devastating war was fought, a war in the heavens that ravaged the solar system. In a final, desperate act of sacrifice or self-preservation, the precursors enacted a terrible choice. They would turn their own home into an impenetrable prison to contain the threat forever. They used their mastery of energy and matter to systematically erase their own history from the planet's surface, creating the Great Unconformity. They flash-froze Antarctica to entomb their final citadel. They erected the null energy shell as the ultimate lock, and they instituted a program of periodic biospheric resets to prevent any future intelligence from repeating their mistakes. They left the scattered, traumatized survivors, early humanity, with a legacy of myth and warning, a cultural quarantine to match the physical one. This grand synthesis provides a powerful and elegant solution to one of the most profound mysteries in science, the Fermi paradox. The question of where is everybody is thus answered with a chilling finality. The great silence we observe in the cosmos is not evidence of absence, it is the sound of a locked door. No one visits because they cannot or because they are wise enough not to. Our solar system is not an undiscovered island waiting for contact. It is a declared quarantine zone, a cosmic leper colony, marked by a warning sign so ancient and so powerful that it has kept the galaxy at bay for millions, perhaps billions of years. The lack of alien signals is not a puzzle. It is the intended, engineered result of the system that now holds us. We are alone because we were designed to be. The implications of this cohesive narrative are profound and deeply personal. We are not a species that arose from primordial ooze to bravely face an empty universe. We are the descendants of a fallen empire, living in a carefully curated nursery built upon the ruins of a battlefield. Our innate drive to explore the stars, our relentless ambition to reach beyond our world, may not be our own destiny calling to us. It may simply be a ghost in our machine, an inherited, instinctual memory of a capacity we once possessed and then tragically lost. The invisible walls that surround our world, which we have long seen as a challenge to be overcome, may in fact be the greatest act of protection or the most terrible punishment ever conceived. We are the children of a great sacrifice, living out our lives in a gilded cage, unaware of the war that was fought for our existence or the horrors from which we are being shielded. Our journey through the evidence is complete. We have followed the clues from the edge of space to the center of the Earth, from the dawn of time to the birth of human consciousness. Each piece on its own could be dismissed as an anomaly, an outlier, a strange but natural phenomenon. But when woven together, they form a tapestry of such detail, of such internal consistency and immense explanatory power that it becomes far more difficult to dismiss than to accept. The Earth itself, through its rocks, its chemistry, and the memories of its children, has told us its story. It is a story of a lost golden age, a terrible war, and the creation of a prison to last for eternity. The mystery of our confinement is solved. The only question that remains is what it means for the future of a species that is finally, after millions of years, beginning to rattle the bars of its own cage. And so, the investigation ends. Not with a triumphant discovery, but with the deafening silence that follows a verdict. We have traveled to the edge of our solar system and to the dawn of time, collecting the scattered evidence of a cosmic tragedy, and now we are left to contemplate the immense and unsettling picture it has formed. The history of our world is not what we thought it was. Our planet is not a cradle of nascent life, but a meticulously prepared and ancient crime scene. Our species is not the first, but perhaps the first to be allowed to forget. This realization does not bring clarity, but a profound and humbling weight. Every assumption upon which we have built our civilization, our uniqueness, our destiny in the stars, our mastery over our own world, is now called into question. We are left standing in the shadow of a truth so vast, it redefines the very meaning of being human. forcing us to look at our world, our past, and our future through new and far more fearful eyes. This newfound knowledge forces us to confront the ghost that lives within us, our unyielding ambition to explore the cosmos. We have always seen this drive as our noblest instinct, the pinnacle of the human spirit. But what if it is not our own? What if this yearning for the stars is merely a phantom limb, a deeply ingrained biological or spiritual echo of a capacity we once possessed and then lost in the great cataclysm? It would mean that our dream of interstellar travel is not a glimpse of our future, but a fragmented memory of a forgotten past. Every rocket we launch, every probe we send into the void, is not a brave step forward, but an unconscious attempt to reclaim a birthright that was violently torn from our ancestors. We are a species, haunted by a past we cannot remember, driven by an instinct we do not understand, forever reaching for a home we have been deliberately locked out of. If a civilization capable of planetary engineering, of manipulating matter and sealing a solar system, could fall so completely that it was erased from the very rock of its own world, then what does that say of our own? Our proudest achievements, our tallest skyscrapers and most powerful networks, turn to dust in the face of such a comparison. We see ourselves as the masters of this planet, yet we are merely tenants in a house built upon the ruins of a far greater and more tragic dynasty. The story of the precursors is the ultimate mirror, and in it we see the reflection of our own hubris. The cyclical nature of civilization is no longer an abstract historical theory. It is a warning written in the language of geology and mass extinction. It suggests that technological intelligence may be a self-limiting phenomenon, a candle that, by its very nature, burns brightly and then snuffs itself out, leaving behind only the faintest chemical smoke for the next cycle to find. This leaves us suspended between two equally terrifying possibilities, the two great interpretations of our confinement. Are we the prisoners, or are we the protected? If we are prisoners, then our solar system is a cosmic Alcatraz, and we are the descendants of a species that committed a crime so terrible it warranted eternal solitary confinement. The walls were built to contain a threat, and that threat is us, or something latent within us. But if we are the protected, then our world is a sanctuary, a celestial nursery shielded from a universe filled with unimaginable horrors. The walls, in this view, are not a punishment, but a profound and ancient act of love, the final sacrifice of a civilization that chose to be forgotten so that we might have a chance to live in peace. Is the silence of space a sign of our condemnation, or is it a testament to our salvation? We may never know, but the answer defines our entire existence. And what of the wardens? If the quarantine is still active, who maintains it? Are there silent guardians still watching from the dark, the inheritors of an ancient duty, ensuring the lock remains bolted? Or is the system a ghost, a dead machine still performing its final automated function, its builders long since turned to dust? The profound silence from beyond the Oort cloud is ambiguous. It could be the quiet diligence of a cosmic caretaker, or the cold, indifferent operation of a billion-year-old mechanism that has forgotten its own purpose. We are either being watched over by forces beyond our comprehension, or we are utterly alone in a tomb of their making. Both possibilities are equally humbling, casting humanity as a minor character in a drama whose main actors have long since left the stage, leaving behind only the silent, imposing set. Regardless of the reason, one fact seems inevitable. Humanity is a species of locksmiths. It is in our nature to pick at locks, to solve puzzles, to push against boundaries. Our technological progress is a slow, inexorable march toward the day we will finally forge a key to our own cage. Every advance in physics, every new propulsion system, every deeper understanding of the fabric of space-time brings us one step closer to that moment. But this new perspective recasts that moment of ultimate triumph as a potential act of ultimate folly. We are like children, raised in a single safe room, who have spent all their lives diligently working to unlock the one door they were told never to open. We see it as a rite of passage, a declaration of our maturity. We have never stopped to consider that the door might have been locked for a very, very good reason. This is the final, terrible question that our investigation leaves us with. It is the question that will hang over our species for as long as it endures. When we finally succeed, when we build the engine or open the gateway that allows us to bypass the invisible walls, what will we find on the other side? Will we be stepping out into the empty, welcoming universe we have always dreamed of? A vast frontier ready for our exploration? Or will we be ringing a dinner bell that has been silent for eons, finally announcing to the horrors of the void that the quarantine has been breached and that the carefully prepared meal left to incubate for millions of years is finally ready? This is the ultimate gamble, and the stakes are not just our future but the silence and stability that our distant ancestors may have died to give us. Our journey through deep time ends here, but the journey of our species is at a pivotal crossroads. We now stand before the bars of our gilded cage, aware of their existence for the first time, holding the fragmented blueprints of a key. The choice of what to do next will define the future of life on this small blue marble, this beautiful, fragile, and profoundly lonely world. We are the inheritors of a forgotten war, the subjects of an ancient decree, and the masters of our own uncertain destiny. The silence of the stars is no longer an invitation, it is a question, and we are the answer. Our journey through deep time ends here for today, but the quest for answers is eternal. If you believe this forgotten story needs to be told, help us by sharing this documentary, liking and subscribing for the next chapter in our exploration. Thank you for traveling with us.